Okay, so hopefully this brings up my full view here. Can you see me in this camera here? Good? Yeah? Okay. Good. Okay, so if kneeling is something that maybe gives you a bit of difficulty in your knees or feet, please have a blanket nearby or a bolster nearby. And I think that's all we're going to need for props today. You know what, actually, if you have a bolster or yoga blocks, you might want to bring those around. We are going to be doing a half shoulder stand at some point today. So, you know, kind of depending on where your energy is at, that can become a supported half shoulder stand. So just have a block or something to be putting your back onto when we get to that point. A bolster works really great for that as well. I don't know how many yoga props you've got there in Mexico, but have what you've got. Oh, look, she's got lots of yoga props. That's awesome. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to actually just invite you to begin down on your backs. So please just have a lay down and we will begin here on our back. We're going to do some practices about all around sort of bringing the physical practices and the yoga practices of bringing alignment into the koshas, and just touching on the different practices that bring alignment into the koshas, which are the sheaths, the 5 bodies that make up our human experience. So I thought I would just read a little from the 300-hour manual while you just get settled. So find your way to your back, find your way into your breath. Take a few moments and let yourself ground and settle. Beginning to release some of the tensions from the body. So the question that is presented at the very beginning of the lesson is, are we just a physical body? And Monks begins with, we are full of potential energy, and this energy lies in our spirit. As we progress along our spiritual journey, life unfolds new powers and new qualities. According to the mystics, we as humans function upon several planes. The physical plane is the lowest in the scale, but is the most essential for growth in this present stage of development, meaning our human experience. It provides us with the vehicle that we make for this journey, or that we need to make this journey. In fact, the physical body is considered the temple for the soul, and therefore it needs to be treated with the greatest of care. By doing so, the body is then perfected and ready to pursue our higher spiritual purposes. We may at times perceive the physical body as a hindrance to our spiritual growth, but the mind and the body provide a means for the spirit to express itself. So the first body that most of us are so aware of course, is this physical body. But it is not the only body that we have, but it's so present. It's the food body, the Anamiya Kosha. So as you find your breath, feel your body. Breathe in and be aware of your body. Breathe out and be aware of your body. You may begin to notice the suffering and the heaviness of this physical body. And as Mugg says, it is important that we practice kindness and compassion to this body. It is the temple. So breathe in, relax your body. And breathe out to calm your body. This is the outermost sheath. And the Anamiya Kosha, the layer of breath, of prana that brings life into the physical body, is of course our breath, rides upon our breath, prana. So start to explore, just become really invested in the in-breath. Let the out-breath happen quite naturally, very full and relaxed. Just really focus into awareness of the in-breath. Become attuned to the fact that every time you breathe in, it is affirmation that you are alive. This food body is alive. Thich Nhat Hanh would say, doesn't that connect us to the joy of life? The opportunity for joyful experience of life happens with every in-breath. This is the vital force composed of life force, and it pertains to breath and energy. It is the underlying network associated with sustaining the physical body, and it connects the body and the mind. So the practices of pranayama bring us into awareness of this pranic body and stabilize it inside the form of the physical body. Begin to work with the three-part breath here. So breathing in lower, middle, and upper, the dirga, trying to use each section, if you imagine each of sections of the lungs being equal in size, and you're just starting to bring the breath in the pattern of lower, middle, upper, exhaling the same way, lower, middle, upper. Striving to fill each section of the lungs fully. Pranayama, the practices of breath, steadying or prana expansion or prana control, make it possible for us to live with vitality and good health. Emotions are said to belong primarily in this realm of the body. The Anamiya Kosha is the mental sheath of the lower mind, which receives information through the five senses. The mind of sensory input, processing of sensory input. It's also the monkey mind, the mind that is so easily distracted by sensory input. But this is also the mind that helps us to perceive the world around us and has tremendous influence over the bodily systems. We must develop mental and emotional processes to work effectively with this body. So concentration, focusing fully into the practice of pranayama, holding the mind steady, acknowledging the distractions of the sensory input, the five senses, but then training this monkey mind to be present on one thing. Right now, the practice of dirga. The fourth body, Vijnanamaya Kosha, also known as the intellectual or wisdom sheath, refers to the higher functioning of the mind, the discernment between what is real and what is not real. This is the mind that evaluates, perceives, watches. This is the mind that brings us into the seat of our true nature. The lower mind is full of uncertainty and doubt, and the higher mind brings certainty and faith. And it connects us to the sense of stillness because sattva, the state of purity, harmony, and balance, is its natural state. Meditation is the tool to help us rise above the mental conditioning of the lower mind to access the higher mind. Practice observing yourself through the practice of dirga, through the practice of relaxation. Observe the distractions of the lower mind. Notice the stillness of the higher mind. And the final sheath, the Anamiya Kosha, the bliss sheath. This sheath has the capacity of permeating the whole being with spiritual joy. Here, we become connected to the Atman, the soul that is contained at the very heart of all of these sheaths, these layers of illusion wrap around the soul. So even the Anamiya Kosha is considered visible in terms of this is what will fade away when we pass. But it is in this sheath that we understand the divine. We connect to it within ourselves. Regular practice of yoga nidra, whether through these rest relaxation exercises or the experience of samadhi, brings us into connection. It gives us a state of no experience or conscious unconsciousness. So we're going to now do a bit of practice that is actually meant to draw all of these bodies into one place. So sometimes these layers are sort of like shaken out of alignment for lots of different reasons that would happen. And so there are some physical practices that we can do that harness all of those energies and bring them into one place. So if you have the ability to lengthen your legs down to the ground, please go ahead and do that if the knees are bent. But if you need to do a few things to loosen off your low back, before we start, maybe rock the knees, bent knees from side to side a few moments. Maybe you need to draw your knees in towards your chest and give yourself a good hug. Maybe lifting your nose up towards your knees. Like just prepare your body to come all the way into Shavasana with the legs down to the floor. Now I know that might not feel possible for some of you today, so if that's the case, you could use a blanket behind your thighs and sort of have a little bit of a bent knee. Or you can also perhaps do this for a time with the legs to the ground, and then you might feel that you need to bend the knees, so do feel free to do that as you need. And just do this practice to the best of your ability. So as you're ready, lengthening the legs down to the ground, begin to drop the mind, breathing down into the lower lungs, and really try to breathe down into the lower lungs while the middle and upper lungs are staying quiet. And become very aware of the belly, the hips, the legs, the knees, and the feet. Just take a few moments, really dropping the mind down into the lower body. Breath into the lower belly, or the lower lungs, which will feel like the belly, and down into the lower legs. So when we breathe this way, physiologically, we're practicing really expanding down into the lower lobes of the lungs, which actually draw blood, like send oxygenated blood down into this part of our body. And where our mind goes, our energy flows. So now what we're going to do is we're going to link our breath with our body, which of course then links mind and body even further. So we inhale, we roll the legs inwards so the toes come to touch. So you can separate your feet as far as it's appropriate. That allows you to roll the feet in as close as you can with your in-breath, big toes come to touch. And then exhale, roll the legs outwards, bringing the sides of the foot towards the floor. Maybe eventually you'll actually have enough rotation to roll the feet all the way in, big toes coming to touch, and the sides of the feet as you exhale all the way out. And just continue to do this for a few rounds. Continue to drop the mind and the breath low into the body. And then we go through those layers. First we have to figure out how to do it, and then we kind of understand what its purpose is, and then we just do it. Just be the movement, just experience it. This is a practice known as the Kaya Kriya, the body Kriya. So Kaya means body. And Kriya is a methodical action to prepare. So this is an action to bring Koshas back into alignment in its entirety. So we're just through the first step. Now, when you relax, go ahead and relax, let the breath return into a natural rhythm, and just notice if you have the ability perhaps to perceive new energy in your lower body, or perhaps to relax more deeply. Simply acknowledging whatever is there physically as sensation, acknowledging any emotions or energy that rise up out of these practices. If you need to, at this stage, for your back's comfort, feel free to bend the knees as we start to bring the awareness into the middle lungs. So you're going to start to breathe into the middle lungs, really drawing lots of breath into the middle aspect of the lungs, doing your best to quiet the lower and the upper aspects of breathing. So this is very intercostal, lots of ribs. You'll feel your lungs moving, and this really feeds the lungs themselves and the heart. And the lobes of the lungs here send oxygenated blood out through the arms and shoulders down into the hands as well. So perceive this middle aspect of your body. Each of these work not just with the physical body, but all the way down into the Anamiya Kosha. So every layer. So the lower lungs, we would be working with the first and second, and possibly the third chakra. And then the middle lungs here, we are working with possibly the third chakra, certainly the heart chakra, and possibly some of the throat chakra. The movement then that becomes associated with this is when, and notice here, just note, the rolling of the arms is exactly opposite to the breath as the legs were. So when we inhale, you're going to roll the arms on the floor, so they stay on the floor, rolling the arms back. So you roll your hands as far as you can. And then you exhale, you roll the hands inwards and you roll your arms inwards as far as you can. And you just do this with your breath while you remain connected to breathing in this middle aspect of the body. Inhaling, roll the arms back. Exhaling, roll the arms in. And you roll them as far as you can. And that might mean that your elbows sort of roll off the floor. That's just fine. Let's connect to this. The nice thing about these movements, as well as the fact that it works in the physical body and lessens tensions inside joints, it also works as a nerve slide. So the big nerves that come out from the spine and go down the arms are really getting a nice slide. So really nourishing for the nerves that go down into our limbs. And then when you're ready, go ahead and relax. And just notice all of the information that's there in this section of the body, on the physical level, on an energetic level, an emotional level. Maybe there's mental thoughts percolating up from the monkey mind. aware of the quiet bliss-like level. Even a little shaking. If you're having like little tingles and stuff, just make sure you're readjusting. And next time you do this, do feel free to change the angle of your arms that you've set them at from beside you. So you could go from anywhere from like T position to more like a 45-degree angle or closer to the hips. And that might change how the nerves can move. Excuse me. Now start to bring the breath up into the upper lungs and really start to perceive the upper part of the chest, throat, jaw, face, skull, brain, and mind as you breathe into the upper lungs. So the upper lobes of the lungs really do nourish the brain and the face. Asthmatics tend to have a lot less movement of breath from their upper lungs. So this could be a lot of work for some of you and for those that have maybe been struggling with respiratory tract illnesses recently. So very good exercise on every level. And this is, of course, coming into the throat chakra, Agnya as well, the third eye. And the movement now associated with it is when you breathe in, you roll your head to the right, and you breathe out, you roll your head to the left. And you just try to do this as if your breath was able to move you. Inhaling, roll the head to the right. Exhaling, roll the head to the left. All of these movements match the pace of our breath. The breath is continually, hopefully, slowing and becoming more full. So the movement would then correspond. Some of you might have the urge to pick your head up and turn it. That may indicate that there's a bit of an alignment, a misalignment of the physical spine for whatever reason. So just notice if that's the case, if you're unable to sort of roll the head along the floor. You can just notice that. Nothing wrong, just notice. And then coming back to center when you're ready, and just continue to keep your mind on the upper aspects of the bodies, all the bodies. Just noticing how that feels. So when all the chakras are able to spin and send their energy out freely, and the mind and the body are all in one place, and we're able to acknowledge all that is present within us and stabilize it with these practices, we really begin to perceive ourselves more fully. So the full Kaya Kriya is to do all of these movements together, but in a sequential manner. So what will happen is when you're inhaling, it becomes the three-part breath again, lower, middle, upper. But then your limbs will roll and your head will roll in correspondence with this breath. So when you breathe in, the legs will roll in, then the arms will roll out, and then the head would roll to the right. And then you're going to breathe out, and the legs will roll out, the arms will roll in, and the head will roll to the left. So what this is doing is really taking out all these levels of the way that we approach the koshas, brings it all into one practice. So let's try this together. I'll talk you through a few rounds, and then I'm going to let you go through it on your own. So obviously the pace that I choose will be the pace that I'm working with here. It may or may not work for you, but let's give it a go together. So like extending the legs down to the floor. Breathe out to begin. Breathing in, roll the legs in, then the arms out, and the head rolls to the right. Breathe out, legs roll out, arms roll in, head rolls to the left. Breathing in, legs roll in, arms roll out, head rolls to the right. Breathing out, legs roll out, arms roll in, head rolls to the left. One more time. Breathing in, legs roll in, arms roll out, head rolls to the right. Breathing out, legs roll out, arms roll in, head rolls to the left. Now continue to do this yourselves a few rounds. Remember that it connects with our three-part breath. Just do your best. When you are ready to let go, come back to center after you exhale and relax. And of course, yeah, I just love to see that you're just honoring your body, Trina, right? So here you get this opportunity to just take a moment, awaken. If there's anything to release different tensions in your body, okay. You might find that when you come up rolling over to your side, just take a few moments on your side. Trina, I see you shaking that arm, and I'm just sort of making a bit of an assumption that there's a little bit of tingling and sort of like, yeah, okay, so possibly you've just pinched a little, like maybe there's a little bit of compression or some restriction in one of the nerves, and we've just sort of aggravated it through the rolling. So when you do work your way up to seated, maybe just do, you know, some different shoulder movements. Even rolling the arm without the floor underneath you might help. But I bet we've just found some compression into something, possibly. So please join me seated, taking your time. I want to learn more about that. Are you doing okay though? Feeling okay, Trina? Yeah, it's gonna be okay. Okay. So one thing that we can actually do, especially when we're feeling like a lot of stickiness through this part of our body, just trying to respond to what you might be experiencing, is actually just come into a comfortable cross-legged position. We'll just do a little bit of warm-up before we move into our next sort of pranayama exercises. This is why the science of hatha yoga is so lovely to learn as teachers, is because all of these practices are here to bring the alignment into this experience, this human body, so that I can express myself as the spirit wants to unfold through my body. I can check my ego. So all of these practices, when we say purification, it's not about that I am sinful and I need to purify myself, but rather that I am made of this earth, right? This physical body is made of the elements of the earth, right? Earth, air, water, fire, ether. And so in order for my spirit, which is none of those, to actually come and be sort of for me to experience through the thickness of this earth, means that I need to stabilize, right? And get really quiet. And the Anamiya Kosha, that bliss sheath, has the sattvic energy, right? That stillness. Vijnanamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha are always in alignment, okay? It's the three layers of physical, mental, emotional, and prana that need help to stabilize into that space, okay? And then we can start to perceive it more clearly. So that bliss experience of the Anandamaya Kosha is sattvic. The quiet of the mind is sattvic. So if you remember from the three gunas, sattvic is harmony, balance, peace, and it's the closest within this sort of earthly experience to the divine's energy. So we cultivate sattvic energy so that we can come closer to the divine's energy, so that perhaps maybe when we have purified ourselves enough, okay, so not removed the sins so much from my body, but brought myself to the state of sattvic energy on every level, would I be able to experience that state? Okay, so sorry, I got distracted in a bit of tucking. Let's do a little bit of warm up. So sitting comfortably, I have a bit of height under my hips. I've got firmness below my navel. Draw your jawline in. Let's see if we can release some of that shoulder sort of stickiness or maybe nervy stickiness that you're feeling there. So start with the head. So just breathe in to look to the right. Breathe out to look to the left. And just do that a few times. Breathing in to the right. Breathing out to the left. You might notice here, different sensations that may be impactful to how the nerves and muscles are able to move. And so you're just going to use your own inner wisdom to just be present and not push through, but observe what is there. And perhaps relax and allow for change to happen, releasing to happen. Come back through to center after an exhale, and then we can go up and down. So we breathe in, up, breathe out, down. In, up, out, down. Just continue that a few times. Now coming back through to center. Now I had some pranayamas that I was going to teach you, but I'm actually changing my mind on the fly here because of this particular practice that we came into. I think the pranayama that we'll shift to, let's do the Chaturang Pranayama. I was going to teach just Ujjayi because Ujjayi is really for sort of this pranic astral body. It brings tejas, light, lots of energy into Ujjayi, and it brings a lot of endurance, and it helps us to rise up over a restless mind, Ujjayi. But the Chaturang Pranayama actually it uses Ujjayi to do the same, but we use, it means, so Chatur means four, and Mukha is face. So this is the four faces. So each of the directions, right, left, up, down, represent Brahma's four faces. So Brahma is the creator, and Brahma can see all perspectives all at once, like we were talking about, right? Like as the more we practice yoga, the more we have more sort of equanimity for contradictions and paradoxes, and for people to believe different things, and letting that be okay. That's what happens when we practice yoga and we come into that sattvic space. We begin to realize that actually that all can exist together, and we can be in harmony within our own selves with that. And so here we're turning the head, and we're using like a Jalandhara Bandha to do this. So Jalandhara Bandha means we're drawing the jawline in, and you're just going to use a really subtle Ujjayi as you turn your head, and you're going to turn your head to the right and breathe in, and see if you can notice if the breath comes, hang on, let me make this right. Head moves in four directions. First to the left, because what we're going to try to notice is if we can feel the breath come in through the right. So your jawline's drawing in, creating a little Jalandhara Bandha. You turn your head to the left and see if you can feel the breath coming in through the right nostril. Then you turn your head to the right. So exhale, come back through to center. Turn your head to the right and use that Jalandhara Bandha and a slight Ujjayi. So you can feel the breath coming in through the left and back through to center. Then as we inhale, it's going to be lowering the chin first, right? And as we do that, we inhale. And then raise it. And then when we look up, we come back with an exhale. Okay, so we've done this a couple times. I want you to just remember what the purpose is. So when we breathe in, we turn our head to the left. The breath is coming in through Pingala Nadi, the right nadi. Exhale to center. Inhale to the left or to the right. The breath comes in through the left nostril, Ida Nadi, coming back through the center. We inhale to look down, and it's like the breath is being pulled in through the back side of both nadis. And we come back through to center. We inhale to look up, as if the breath is coming in through both nadis and back. Okay? And just continue this for a few more times, please. This is said to strengthen the nerves and the neck muscles, gives peace to the mind, and purifies the Ida and the Pingala nadis. And coming back through to center when you are ready. And then just sit quietly, just noticing. We could stay with lots of pranayamas. There's another pranayama called the Brahma Mudra that uses the same and uses sound. I think we'll save that for another day. So moving on with some more warm-ups, still observing some of that stickiness in your shoulders. So yep, just do a few more of these shoulder circles. It's nice to think about making sure that you're paying attention the whole way through. So consciousness, bringing the mind into the practice is really essential for aligning the bodies. I like the idea of touching on the 4 points of a clock. So if 12 o'clock was at the top, 3 o'clock was at the back, 6 o'clock was at the bottom, 9 o'clock was forward. So just drawing the shoulders around. And then when you relax, just bring the spine into alignment, the jaw into alignment. We want to align the spine straight up and down. That helps to bring the bodies into alignment. Now bring your fingers to your elbows and lift the elbows up and down. Okay, now watch, make sure you start from that postural integrity. And when you bring the shoulders up, don't push the head forward. You're just keeping the spine nice and steady. Okay, and then you might find that you have the urge to take the elbows around in circles. It just feels a little different than just the shoulders going around. So give that a go, see how that feels. And then go in the other direction. And then when you're ready, go ahead and relax. Maybe give a little shake. Little seated cats and cows can help you to find more comfort if you're getting a little uncomfortable seated here. And I just encourage you to switch your legs if you're cross-legged for a moment so that we can just have some semblance of harmony or balance in between our hips as we can finish here with a little more for our hands, arms, neck. So this is lovely for preparing the wrists, but it also really helps with the nerves and lengthening the nerves in the arms and releasing any compressed nerves through the shoulder girdle. So you press through the palms, okay? So just make take a moment here before you start to raise the hands up to make sure your posture is well. You've created that firmness below your navel. And your head is in alignment. Now, when you start to inhale and bring the arms up, don't let the head jut forward or the ribs to start to jut forward. Just bring the arms up as high as you possibly can without ignoring any of the feedback from your body. And then you're pressing through the palms as if trying to press them into the ceiling, breathing nicely here. And then shake your head with a gentle no. And what we're doing here is we're just freeing sort of the muscles that get trapped in the top of the shoulder here. And then when you stop shaking, you might find that you can actually sort of lengthen the arms a little higher, perhaps. And if it's not appropriate for what's going on in your body, please go ahead and change. But then when you exhale and you release, perhaps you'll notice perhaps a little more freedom in the tops of the shoulders and the neck. And then we would repeat that one more time. I like to do this with the fingers crossed in the awkward manner. It's interesting how it can really change. So if you're not sure, how did I cross my fingers? Well, just cross your fingers without thinking. You always cross them the same way. And then just switch which index finger is on top and which thumb is crossed or whatever. And then press through the palms again. And then when you're ready, just make sure your posture is good. Draw the arms up into the air. Shake the head no when you're ready, and then press through the palms a little more. Good, and then when you're ready, go ahead and release. And give the shoulders a little wiggle, okay? And at this stage, it'll feel really quite nice to take the legs out in front of you. So go ahead and swing the legs out in front of you. You might feel like you really want to do something like a knee rock. If your hips are feeling tight, low back is feeling tight, feel free to take one of these. This is a really good way, simple way to help prepare the hips for movement. There's a little bit of internal rotation, a little external rotation. Helps to improve the sort of distribution of synovial fluid inside the hips. So that's nice. Okay. And we can lengthen the legs out in front of us. I've come off my seat here, but if you wanted, you can have a little wedge, but you just don't want to be moving into hyperextension. And give your legs a really good thump to the floor. So there's some other ways that we can really help ourselves come into our bodies. So like really bring the koshas into alignment. This is an excellent way for children to, I find that a lot of children are disconnected from their bodies, especially children and adults that have had trauma tend to not be really in their bodies, right? So what we can do is actually help ourselves to feel our bodies. So just start to tap your thighs. So we tap the back of the legs and just tap your thighs all over. Give them a really good tap. And then if you need to, you can bend your knees and do the same with your calves. Just maybe even use like a side of your fist. Don't hurt yourself. It's just meant to be like soothing and nice. Just a good thump. Okay. Same thing, you can thump your feet. Give your feet a good thump. Okay. In fact, you can do the floor with your feet. And then like start to work your way up, you know, give your back a good thump. Just really feeling the back. Oh, I got some tenderness back there, right? Find some tenderness and you can thump your belly. Just start to work your way up your chest and your back. Just patting all around. And then you can thump your arms. I like to think of it like, you know, like when you're like working with clay and you're just like trying to, you know, it's like you're like, oh, you know, and then just thump yourself all over, thump your head. Good thump, you know, all this. Now use your fingers on your face. Just give your face a finger tap. Okay, all right. Simple techniques, fast and easy to bring ourselves back into our bodies. So we'll now come over onto hands and knees. Now, if your wrists are going to be a little tender, feel free to work on fists or to maybe use a wedged blanket to lift the heels of your hands slightly. If your knees are tender, feel free to use a blanket. We'll start with some cats and cows. You might find the urge to really like maybe a downward dog might feel really good, just stretching out the backs of the legs after all that seated sort of work. Or if downward dog doesn't really feel accessible today, you can just press back through the heels and enjoy a nice stretch through the calves there. Okay. So all of our asanas and our kriyas could be strictly physical, but then we'd miss out on all of the benefits for all the other bodies. But do know that you can't do one thing in one body. So if you do a physical something, well, it's going to affect all the other bodies. If you have an emotional trauma, it's going to affect all the other bodies. So just know that. But what we focus on is what we really cultivate in our lives. So from hands and knees here, cats and cows can feel quite physical, right? So we move the tail, inhaling to bring the gaze forward, exhale, curl the tail, rounding the back. So let's just start on that level. Just pay attention to sort of the how-to, the musculoskeletal level of cats and cows. Now, I know Trina and I discussed sort of making sure that those points that tend to be really overused when you have fusions, that you're working really well to keep those from taking the brunt of that movement, which they'll try to do. So just be really aware of how to distribute the movement through the fullness of the spine. If you have fusions, there'll be sections where the movement cannot happen. So you just have to be mindful to not overuse the joints on either end. And just feel sort of the musculoskeletal effects of this. Now start to perceive sort of the deeper sort of fascial levels. So as you close the body and round the back,
feel how that sort of like closing of the bodies and tissues and the cavity of the abdomen pushes the breath out. And then when you move through into the cow and the belly is spreading open, that opening of the abdomen drawing the breath in and out. So start to perceive sort of the inner workings, not just the musculoskeletal, but now the organs and how they're being impacted by this movement. And how the movement alone can now really start to be pranayama. So start to think of lower, middle, upper as you inhale, and then exhale, lower, middle, upper. And start to perceive this as a pranayama. So we're still doing the musculoskeletal level, the fascial level. But now we're focusing on how is this a pranayama? And when you settle into a child's pose, and I'll invite you to take that, settle into a child's pose. Your forehead may come to the floor, or you might find the need to put your hands on your knees, or hands under your forehead, excuse me. But here, just try to settle into the stillness, sattvic experience of the Vijnanamaya and the Anandamaya Koshas. The rest is where we can really often settle into those spaces. Okay, so we're gonna come back up and we're gonna do one more pranayama. It's also a little bit of a lovely warm up as well. And here we can actually maybe start to embody a bit of the symbolism. So Sharabhasana is the posture. So Sharabhasana is we take the leg behind us. It's a back bend. So Trina, we've talked about back bends, right? And how to sort of like feel them out in your own body, what is more accessible. So you see there's really no back bend here yet. This is actually, Trina, what is probably going to be most appropriate. I actually made a note when we were doing our yoga together that this would probably be pretty important for you to start to feel. There's this sort of junction here at the hips and the waist that really needs to stabilize to make sure, see if you can see my low back. So one of the things that tends to happen is as soon as we start to extend a leg, there's this subtle movement right here. And it's right here, right? So like right at that structure of the SI and that L5, right? So it's a little like this. So that L5 that you've injured there, right? Like that would compress it, right? Something like this. So when I come up into this, so the back bend component is just like cat. It is the whole spine, or sorry, cow. The whole spine comes into it like this. Now that might not feel very good for you, Trina. Okay, so what you're going to do instead is to practice keeping this unchanging while you lift the leg. Yeah, it's going to take a lot more core work. Okay, and you're just going to practice that from side to side. Right? Just because if you're doing it correctly, there's no change at that joint structure and you're really working with your core. Now, Holly and I, or anyone else that decides to follow along with this class, can try this as it is now, it becomes, Sharabhasana can become a pranayama where this is the inhale and I'm filling my right lung because my right leg is back. And then I exhale and come back. And then when I take my left leg back and inhale into Sharabhasana, I am extending and really pulling the left lung more open and then exhaling and coming back. So let's do this just a couple times. So you can feel the back bend of Sharabhasana, but the way that the breath is pulled into one side just a little more than the other because of the lengthening of the body. Now, Holly and I are intentionally moving into a back bend, but it would be really ideal is if we knew how to stabilize that sort of SI lumbar structure so that when I move into it, I'm not dumping into my lumbar spine or my sacrum. Okay. Now, we've done this a few times. I'm going to invite you, as you're ready, to settle back into a child's pose again. And you might feel like maybe there's a lot of emotions starting to move through you. Because when we do asana and pranayama and pranayama, the Anamiya Kosha, where the emotions reside, really start to move emotions. And so we might have things rising up. So feel free to take Pushpa Puta Mudra, placing your face in your hands in child's pose. And mudras is an excellent way for us to access all of the bodies. It creates a closed circuit in the energy systems of our bodies. So instead of energy moving outwards, it's contained. So maybe you can notice how just placing your hands over your face sort of closes the energy of your body, makes you a more self-contained unit, able to perceive yourself more. When you're ready here, I'm going to invite you, if you feel like you want a downward facing dog or something before you come forward onto your belly, you can feel free to take one of those. But please just take a moment to observe, and I'll give you a quick demo here before you come to your belly so that you kind of seen it and aren't struggling to see the camera. Okay. So just trying to do my best to honor what, like I want you to be able to do your back bends and have the benefits of a back bend, but making sure that it's happening in such a way that you don't pay for it later. That would be ideal, right? So you're going to choose what sort of level of effort that you would like to do here. This is Sarpasana, the serpent pose. So it's a little different than cobra in that we change our hand positioning. And there's lots of different ways we can do this. The feet are going to stay to the ground. If you have low back pain, a wider stance of your feet away from each other does tend to make that sense of compression gets a little bit of ease. But as your back improves in its health, or if you have no discomfort, the closer you bring your feet together, the traditional posture, right? Serpent pose, the feet are quite close together. And just like we do in cobra, we want to have a sense of firmness in our back body. It's not just this lax, and neither am I just clenching my butt. Then the hands will come down here. The feet stay to the ground. And so here, you just need to be aware of like, how am I going to lift my head? So Trina, it might just be like a breath in, and like you might not get very high at all. It might be more like this, okay? And that's okay. But what you're trying to feel is your full body's effort to do this. Like, how are you going to create this thoracic movement without moving only your neck and without relying on only one spot in your body? It becomes a bit of an effort through the whole body. My legs are working. Hands can stay to the floor. Then we could try hands up. Then we're going to try hands out wide. Hands can stay to the floor, okay? Or they can come up, okay? And it may or may not be appropriate to bring the hands forward where they'll stay to the floor, or they can come up, right? So each of these are sort of progressions in difficulty. Levers, arms are levers, they make it more hard, right? So whichever one it provides you the appropriate amount of challenge, you go ahead and stay there and just repeat that one, okay? So come on down onto your belly. I'll talk you through it while I'm observing you. Okay, thanks, Holly. All right, so your legs become pressed into the ground, whether you bring them close together or further apart. That kind of depends on how your back feels. So do give that a try. Your hands will come down beside your hips, and you're gonna firm up your legs. So you can turn your palms down so they're sort of like pressed into the floor to be a little bit of stabilization for you. Chin is to the floor. Firming up your body, use an inhale to raise the chest and the gaze. Now, whatever is appropriate for you is fine. And then go ahead and exhale to release. And then just relax, and do feel free to, if at any point, we will do a counter pose after this series, but if you need one before then, feel free to do that. Now, if you'd like to repeat that,
So Trina, if that's really going to get into it, then don't lift your chest at all. Instead, just practice just sort of like creating that body tensioning. Like you don't have to actually lift, right? Like just practice like sort of finding what it takes to do that and then stay within the body's appropriate measure of things. So now you could even try lifting the hands if that's appropriate, reaching them towards the feet. And then exhaling to release. And just make sure you relax in between each posture. Now you could repeat that. This is the traditional sort of posture. It's very, it's all beneficial. We can take the arms out wide like an airplane, and that's going to change the way the pose feels. Okay. So now everything stays, all other factors are the same. Your hands can stay to the floor, inhaling to rise up. The legs are firm. Just notice how it maybe changes things. And then exhale to take yourself back down, relax completely. And you bring the hands forward if appropriate, because this, again, each of these arm positions is changing the way the tissues of the bodies are being held. We're changing the way the prana works in the body, changing our own physical body. And then so the hands can stay to the floor if that's appropriate, or you could try to raise them up and you come up with your in-breath. And then go ahead and release and come back down. Now take your time to come back towards a child's pose when you are ready. And the child's pose, depending on how you unfolded that sarpasana in your body, can be a chance to sort of feel like, how did that happen? And then you can settle back into that awareness of the quiet within you. You can use the Pushpa Puta Mudra. Maybe you're having a lot of mental energy, right? All of these hatha yoga practices are moving energy. So if it's mental energy, feel free to make a triangle, Trimurti. Place it on the floor and place your forehead in between into the triangle of your hands, which then creates a stabilizing energy for the mind, the monkey mind, and accesses us into the Anamiya Kosha, the intuitive wisdom mind. Okay, so rising up, we are going to do a little kriya on our toes here. Now, I am not super aware of your foot and toe health, so let me give you a quick demo and you can make some decisions on your own on what's going to be appropriate. So this is in the Gitananda tradition known as the Utkata Kriya. So Utkata means chair, okay? But in this particular, it's a squat. So the toes are tucked under and I'm sitting onto my heels. Now I don't have fabulous, and you can just watch for a moment. I'll give you a quick demo so you don't have to torture yourselves while you're watching. So I don't have the best of heel mobility. So what I find is that it's actually kind of helpful for me to have something to rest my heels into. So I just pull a little blanket, just the right height, allows me to sink into my heels, okay? Now, if it's your knees or if it's your back, okay, what do I do if the limitation is in my knees or my back? Well, you can use extra height and actually make yourself a little something to sort of sit on, right? And so whatever would be appropriate to be, so this is a little low, I would need something a little larger for this to actually feel like it felt like supportive, but it changes things. So these are your options for propping. Okay, and so here we just drop our nose towards our knees and we take this nice little round. Now this is, you're going to have some limitations, right? Depending on what's going on in your back. So you can stay more forward, but it's this sort of lengthening. So just know that it's going to feel big, for your back there, Trina. So this will be big. And then you actually just shift your weight over into your hands and stretch the toes here with the nose towards the knees. And you just do this 3 times and then you lift the gaze forward. And you do the same thing, but the gaze is forward 3 times. And then we're gonna come up to standing. It'll feel nice to come into a standing forward bend and come up to standing afterwards, okay? So let's give this a go. So connecting down into our feet here. So you're gonna squat,
Feet can be hip distance. If you have some women, their breasts might be getting in the way, or body tissues. So if you need to adjust your stance, fine, you can widen your stance. Just make sure your toes and knees are pointing in the same direction, whatever that looks like. Hands are to the floor, and you drop your nose in the direction of your knees, like you're closing into a ball, and that might feel big all by itself. Okay, and then you shift your weight into your hands and you lift your heels up as high as you can, stretching the toes. And then you exhale to sink back down and sinking into your heels. You just do that 3 times. You stretch the toes, lifting them high, heels high, and then exhale to sink them down. And then when you've done that, you bring the gaze and you look forward and you do the same thing. And you bring the weight into the hands. It's kind of like, it feels a little like crow, right? That same sort of feeling, like you're weighting into the hands, a little like crow, but not weighting on your elbows or anything. And then when that's done, your ankles and feet are going to be feeling something. Go ahead and open up the back of the legs, lifting the hips. Coming into a standing forward bend, you can feel free to place your elbows on your knees if you like. Have a nice little stretch out there. Use your in-breath to come forward and up. Now, if your blood pressure is low, pause halfway up. And just slowly rise up. Okay. There's a sun salutation, a simplified sun salutation. I can't remember if it has a different name. It's really lovely, and I think that it's a really lovely way for us to tie back into the theme of aligning the koshas. So like the discussion we had earlier, if we deny that this human experience is a part of our divine experience, we can end up in a really sort of like discombobulated, incoherent state, right? And I think that's this idea of next week in my meditations. Maybe you'll come, not this Monday, but the following Monday, we're going to do neti, which is the practice of negation. I'm not this body, I'm not this mind. It's bringing us to our soul. But that doesn't mean that this is not real and that I shouldn't embrace this human experience, but rather to recognize it as what it is, which is the illusion of my soul, right? Is like the illusion that has to happen for my soul to experience the lessons that it needs to. But I love the traditional yoga practices that connect us to this earth, because I feel like it connects us into our body, reminds us that we belong here. Okay, we belong here. We are meant to be here as humans, to be having this experience. So what it looks like is this. We take a gentle back bend and we sunburst the arms open while we're in the back bend with an out breath. Now, Trina, with that sort of like nervy stuff you're feeling in your shoulder, that back bend burst open may or may not feel appropriate. So if you find that you get a little nervy stuff from that, just don't do it from the back bend. Just do it from Tadasana, okay? So what it looks like is this, is the inhale, arms come up, I'm in a gentle back bend. I'm using the squeezing of my hips and the back of my legs to keep my back nice and safe. And then I exhale, burst the sun open like a sunburst. And then I'm gonna sink down nice and slow in my Utkatta to place my hands to the earth and have reverence for this earth. So each of this is sort of reverence for life here on this planet, all of which are also the divine, right? Okay, so let's go through this 3 times. So standing here in Tadasana, hands at heart center. Inhale, sweeping, taking the arms up. If a back bend is appropriate, a gentle back bend, exhale, sunburst the arms open like the sunrise. Bring the hands into heart center. Exhale to sink down and place your hands to the earth with reverence. Just take a moment for gratitude for this earthly nurturer that is this earth. Then you'll come through a standing forward bend, so you just lift the hips.
And breathe in to bring the hands back up into heart center. And we'll repeat that. So we inhale, the arms open. The sun comes every morning. Life is guaranteed to be in a cycle. And everything that we need to thrive here in this human life is here for us here and now. We belong here on this earth. You just practice this reverence and gratitude. Just continuing on your own for this last one. Just really try to feel this connection to the cycles of life and birth, death and rebirth that is this planet. And then just pause when you do come back to Tadasana. So in acknowledgement of form, we can maybe start to perceive the spirit that has no form, right? So finishing up here with our standing series, I want to take you through Trikonasana. So you're gonna take your legs out wide. Now, Trikonasana is a wonderful posture, so strengthening. Like it strengthens this physical body and really creates such a place of stable energy. So that is what Trikonasana's inherent, subtle, symbolic energy is, this stability. And if you think of the angles that we're making, of course, they're triangles, right? Which represent the three gunas, the sattva, rajas, tamas of the natural form here, the manifest form. And when those are all stabilized, right, and they're the right amount of energy, we get to have the sense of harmony and balance, which then lead us into experience of the non-form, of the divine that is within them. So let's turn the right toe out to the side. And just sort of notice what that means in your hip and your back. So like maybe just do that a couple times. Like when you do that, just, okay, that might give you a chance to assess like how much external rotation do I actually have, or am I stealing anything from like this, like this, and doing something through my back, right? And if you are changing your back significantly, or you have a lot of discomfort inside the hip here, you might find that just stepping off of like a single narrow plank and just broadening your stance just a little, like you're standing on a wider plank, is sometimes helpful. The back toe, the back foot should be turned slightly in or parallel. The placement of that foot dictates the hip, right? And how it feels up here. You want to use the strength of the front hip to keep that thigh from rolling in. So you're engaging the hip to keep the knee pointing in the same direction as the foot. And your feet should be well balanced. So the weight is well balanced between both feet. Okay. And when you raise the arms up, right, notice that we're creating another set of triangles. So I have all sorts of triangles in my body with my arms up like this. The triangles also represent perspective. So as soon as we choose one perspective, we create an angle to view the world through. Here we have lots of different perspectives to choose from. You're gonna look out over top of your right fingers, and to move into triangle, just reach straight forward. Just make sure you're not rotating the back shoulder. Just reach. Now, Trina, you might need to just stay up quite high depending on where the interaction is in the body. So you just change the angle of the arms, right? And you come into triangle. Now, my shoulder's so tight. You see I'm not coming down very low. That's okay. I can use my hand to support me. Now, feel how strong you are. And here we've just chosen an angle. Strengthen yourself into this angle. Breathe steady and even. And we breathe in and imagine that God's got a hold of your fingertips. He's going to lift you straight up. Release the hands. Turn the toes forward. Okay, if you really need a counter pose, like take a moment and take a forward bend, but we can just perhaps move right over into the other side. So we change now and angle that left foot out. Now you might want to assess that a couple times. Like I've got way more room in my left hip than I did my right hip. So I actually don't have to change anything in my body on this side.
Do adjust the weight, the angle of that back foot so you have a sense of coherence in your joints. And then the same thing in this front hip. You want to have a sense of action. Raise the arms up and then reach forward and come into triangle. So Trikonasana on the other side, and feel the sense of stability through the whole body. Stabilize the mind, stabilize the breath. It's through balancing our lives, creating harmony in our lives, that we start to have the experience of the divine really arising within us. We have the experience of our own spirit. When you're ready, God has a hold of your fingertips, can lift you up, 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 up. Turn the toes forward, and then exhale to fold forward. Just taking a nice forward bend here. Now you might find that you want to heel toe your feet closer together. Just bring your gaze forward, if you like, to rise up, and then step the feet together. So I am a spirit expressing myself through form. That was an energy that, or an insight, that came to Muggs in a meditation one day. I am a spirit expressing myself through form. How am I going to express myself today? Okay, so this can help us to remember that I have all these bodies. This is like how I move through this world. But it is my spirit. This body is simply a temple, a chariot. It is my spirit that is the Lord of this temple, the ruler of this temple. And Shiva is the ruler of the universe, the cosmic universe. He is the cosmic soul. So this is the Shiva Mudra, which you'll find in the Shiva Tandava of the Bharatanatyam dances in India. So this creates a seal of energy in the body. So if we soften the standing knee, okay, and balance poses are excellent for aligning the koshas. So we soften, so standing on the left knee, softening the standing knee, we're gonna place the right leg or right foot against the calf. So it's like I'm sort of standing like, whoop, like so, okay? Now, whatever knee is on top, that shall be the Dolahasta Mudra. So you this is the mudra of the nectar of life dropping down Shiva's hand into the world, okay? And then the other hand is over top the head. So this is the Shiva Mudra. We can even make it a dancing mudra by lifting up on the lifting the standing heel and going up and down. You try to do it with your breath. And then just like Shiva is the cosmic dancer, he's playing the music and weaving the dance of life. Perhaps we can move with that same energy as we switch our sides. So we switch our standing legs, switch our hands, switch our feet, and dance over to the other side as graceful as Shiva does. So the Dolahasta Mudra is a limp hand, sort of dripping down the nectar of life. And then you can try the lift on the heel up and down. And then when you're ready, go ahead and release. Oh, and just take a moment. So one of the simplest ways we can bring full alignment into the koshas is a good shake. So give yourself a really, really good shake. If you have days where you're running into walls and bumping your hips on the counters or stubbing your toe, just take some time and pick some of these practices, one of these practices, whatever you have time for. Balance pose, a shake, a Kaya Kriya relaxation. And then see if that helps to align yourself back into alignment. Just take a moment, feel that out. And we're going to start to move towards our rest. So breathe in, sweep the arms up.
With the sun breath and exhale, just take yourself down to the floor as we come to sit in Ardha Matsyendrasana, our twist, to finish up here with our twist and our inversion. So the Ardha Matsyendrasana is called the half Lord of the Fishes. I cannot do the full Lord of the Fishes. I think monks could probably do the full Lord of the Fishes. It actually involves like a lotus, half lotus. So that's why it's called a half Lord of the Fishes, because we generally don't do the half lotus. Go ahead and bend your right knee, bringing your foot to the floor. Now, if your hips are super tight, your back is super tight, it can be super helpful to lift your height of your hips up. But then the higher your hips come up, the more you might want to be, just be aware you're not hyperextending that back knee. So see how tall you can be here. And then explore taking the leg across. Your sit bone should stay pretty grounded when you take your leg across. If you start to really shift, that might mean that you want a little height, and you can explore that. You could stay right here if this is appropriate for your body, or you might want to try and fold that bottom leg under. And so that may or may not. Now, if you end up in like something like this now, well, if that's the case, try putting a little height under your hips, see if that lets your spine sit nice and tall. But if you're really sort of stuck in this position, it's more appropriate to keep the leg out to where you are, your spine is more neutral, please. So whatever happens to work for your body, okay, whichever one that might be. It's your right leg that's across. Your left hand is going to come to the left or to the right knee. Your other hand's going to come back behind you. Open the shoulder joint, sit tall. Turn with the belly first. You might be able to hook an elbow and bring the gaze around. And just taking several breaths here. Twists are physically so nourishing for the nerves along the spinal column. It creates a lot of tension into that muscle, the spinal extensors. So you can sort of feel that. And you can feel the changing pressures in your abdomen while you breathe and hold this posture. So for those that have Crohn's and that sort of thing, of course, we might need to approach this very carefully. But a lot of the time, this can help to break up adhesions. This breath that is moving the organs is helping to break up adhesions that happen with illnesses like Crohn's and diverticulitis. Now slowly release the gaze forward and unwind, nice and slow. And then unwind your legs and bring the opposite leg in, and then across, and then perhaps under. Okay, so whichever of these variations feel most appropriate for your body, sit up nice and tall. You're going to turn towards your thigh. Your left hand will be on your right hand on the left knee. Other hand will come behind you. Then you might hook that right elbow now. Whatever is appropriate. Now breathe here. Here we're nourishing this third chakra. We get a lot of energy moving into the third chakra. Twists are very nourishing, very sort of pranic building, because they are a detoxifying process for the energetic body. So when you do release the gaze and come back in, perhaps you can notice a sensation of rushing, releasing. Maybe that's blood flow. Maybe it's prana, maybe it's both. So after that, a hug with both knees might feel quite nice. We're going to be coming down to our back just to finish with a half shoulder stand and then into Shavasana. So the half shoulder stand, let me give you a quick view here. So I've got a big block. Now, in the half shoulder stand, there's no weight on the neck. It should be on the shoulders or on the elbows. In fact, shoulder stand, there should be no weight in the neck. It should be on the shoulders. But in half shoulder stand, the weight is on the elbows if you're doing it as a posture. So you may find that you kind of have to, wiggle your way into it. But once you're in it, the weight is on the elbows. If that doesn't feel really accessible, you just put your hips on a block. Now, I know you have that injury in like L5, right? So you have to be mindful that the block doesn't like
hurt the bone, like doesn't push into the inflammation and that sort of thing. So something like a bolster may feel more nourishing, or folded blankets. But if none of that really feels accessible, just do a bridge pose. Just repeat the little bridge pose a couple times, because you'll get the same benefits or similar benefits. So the full or the half shoulder stand, to come into the half shoulder stand, we have to use a little bit of momentum, right, to get our hands under our hips. Now, shoulder mobility, my ability to get my elbows underneath, and so that, I don't know if you can see my hands here, I've got a hold of my hips here, and I'm weighting into my elbows. So my head is like super free. It's like, it's actually quite easy in comparison to the full shoulder stand. But if your shoulders are really tight, you might struggle here, and that's okay. But give that a go. The counter pose will be just Shavasana and rolling your head from side to side. So really let the weight of your elbows or the weight of your hips land into your hands and weight into your elbows. And then your feet should basically, now if they're over top your face, that is Viparita Karani. For the half shoulder stand, we want our legs to be straight up and down. So see if you can bring the legs straight up and down, similar to shoulder stand, but weighted into your hips on your hands, okay? Yeah, and just take the rest when you need it, right? Here you go, good, good. Good, yeah, so walk those elbows in, get your weight of your hips into your hands. Yeah, and the nice thing too, like the bridge pose that you're doing there, Trina, that prepares the shoulders for our half shoulder stand. So all of these things, you still get the benefit of being upside down, you know, seeing the world from a new perspective. There is a lot that happens in the organs. Good, good, good. Yeah, that's the key too. With our shoulder stand and our half shoulder stand is our descent must remain controlled. And then once you come down, you might feel the urge to release your neck. Roll your head from side to side. Pay attention to your body, to what you might need to address the tensions of your body. Shoulder stand particularly acts on the endocrine gland of the pancreas. So for those that are struggling perhaps with sugar issues, or even kidneys, of course, also get pressure here, but mostly the half shoulder stand really impacts the pancreas. Very good for digestion and stomach metabolism health. So when you're ready, go ahead and release. And then just take a few moments to tune into yourself, the physical body. Maybe there is something that can be done to address any tensions that are here for you in this moment. So perhaps there is another movement. Perhaps there's a subtle adjustment of your body. Perhaps you need some props, a blanket behind your knees or under your head. Perhaps you're cool. Whatever you might need so that your physical body can rest. Now, we know that Anamiya Kosha links breath and body. So by connecting to the breath, we find our way home into ourselves. You may need, depending on the strength of the lower mind, the monkey mind. Sometimes that monkey mind, that Anamiya Kosha, is really prominent. So when the monkey mind is prominent, and sometimes it's defaulting to sleep, like if it's trauma or stress, sometimes we'll skip relaxation and go right to sleep. Come to the breath and use pranayama practices to stabilize that part of your body, that part of the bodies. I love the Savitri Pranayama from the Gitananda tradition, which is goes over the ratio of 2 to 1, 2 to 1. So you inhale, say for 6 counts, hold for 3, exhale for 6 counts, hold for 3. That is an amazing pranayama to stabilize the mental Anamiya Kosha and the Pranamaya Kosha.
which then stabilizes into the Anamiya Kosha, the physical body. And there may come a time where we sense that stability is there, because then we can let go of all of the efforts that come from these first three bodies. So the asana and the efforts of the physical body in Anamiya Kosha, we relax this physical body. Perhaps we've eased some of the suffering so that this body is more at ease. And we've stabilized the breath and the mind such that perhaps we can let go of all of the practices of pranayama, so that we can experience the wisdom mind and the bliss body, the wisdom body and the bliss body of Vijnanamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha, which will feel like stillness and peace, and give us access to the state of joy. In Letters from the Yoga Masters, there is a letter from Paramahansa Yogananda on the topic, I believe, of brahmacharya, yes, behaving chastely with chastity. But I love this statement. The God in us is the repository of all that is good and beautiful. And only when we have lost or can lose our identity into that God do we begin to reflect outwardly the inner perfection. The effort must be to move towards the realization of the all beautiful in us, so that we might lose the craving for the beauties and pleasures that are transitory of this world. Not that we stop enjoying this world, but that we stop craving the pleasures that will pass and move towards the joy that is our spirit. Notice your outward moving senses. The Manomaya Kosha, its job is to assess the world around us, to bring in external information through our senses, so that we can perceive what's happening around us. So you can sense the floor pressing against you, the temperature of the room that you're in, the sounds of the world around you, scents, smells. If your eyes are open, you could notice whatever is in front of them. Don't let them rove around and become busy, but you might notice, what you see behind your closed eyes. These are all externally moving. So the senses move us away from the direction of that Atman. But it's how the Atman, the soul, is experiencing the world. Now turn inwardly and start to explore your inner senses. So the science world would call it interoception. Can you perceive the feelings, the sensations of your body from within? So yes, pain, sense of relaxation or heaviness, you can contrast these things. Look for the places in your body that feel warm. Find the places that feel relatively cool. Find the places in your body that feel relaxed and notice them. And then notice the places in your body that feel less relaxed. Now, intuitively, we know what takes us, what feeling inherently coherent in ourselves feels good. It feels good. Not just physically, but right down to a spiritual level. Through every layer, you will feel good, in alignment. So when we have these things that feel less good within ourselves, right now we're exploring our inner senses, what we can do is to breathe the feeling of good into those places. And let go of the things that maybe we can let go of that might be holding us back. Sometimes letting go of those things can be hard. And we might not be able to do it all at once, but maybe we can start to let go of some of our own negative qualities or the beliefs we have about the negative things or less positive things we find in ourselves. We turn even more inward and try to land into the space of your heart. So like the actual physical location of your heart, as if you could turn tiny and be in the cavern space that is your heart. And ask your heart, what does my heart feel like? So the soul, the Atman, is said to reside, the seed, the causal body, the Karana Sharira, resides like a little tiny seed deep in a magical cavern inside of our heart that if we were to enter it would be the size of the universe. That feeling, what is that feeling? Focus on the feeling of your heart. Focus on the feeling so much that it starts to permeate your entire body. And as you feel that feeling, you become connected to the feeling of the heart, and you feel it enter or spread through the whole energy that you are. Let yourself relax deeply into that energy. And gently deepen your breathing. And as you're ready, just let awareness of your senses and your body and space come back to you, but remain in connection with that feeling of your heart. And then strive to awaken and come up to seated, keeping that feeling in your consciousness. Pause and be grateful for whatever you're grateful for today. And then join me seated. I'm going to change the spotlight so I can look at you while we finish. Now, sit for a moment with Lotus Mudra. So the Lotus Mudra, the hands, so the sides of the hands connect and the fingers are spread open. So my thumbs are connected, my little fingers are connected, my fingers are spread open. And that sits in front of the heart. And you can imagine here that your heart is like the lotus and your soul is the seed there in the center of the lotus. The mantra Om Mani Padme Hum. I honor the soul, the lotus flower that is my heart. The more we practice these, the easier it is to enter into the still, quiet spaces that is the Vijnanamaya and the Anandamaya Koshas, where we have a sense of peace and equanimity. And I'll finish here with a reading from Letters from the Yoga Masters. This is the Shavasana was a take on Muggs's heart meditation, and so this is a reading from the heart meditation on page 175. The heart may be the object, but it is the spirit that lies within it that we want so deeply to connect to, so that we not only see the beauty of our true self, but are also able to see the true self within others. The heart will guide us to our inner guru, the Sat Guru, or the true guru that we so desperately long to know. So let's just finish, let's conclude with an Om. So sound is one essential way that we did not really connect to in how we can stabilize ourselves inside these bodies. But the sound of the pranava or the sound of the Om can do that. So let's finish with one Om together. And then just sit for a moment and feel the effects of that. Together, breathe out and then breathe in. I honor the light that is in your heart. Namaste.